This is also a time of change for my family. Catherine, she become Queen Consort. In recognition of her own loyal public service, I know she will bring to the demands of her new role the steadfast devotion to duty on which I have come to rely so much.
No one who was there in the Great Hall was able to comprehend the reason behind the placement of a second crown next to King Charles. After that, the king stood up, requested that Catherine come forward, and then gave a statement that completely demolished all of the anticipations that had been placed on the future of the royal family. Not only was this not a momentary responsibility, but it was also not an honorary gesture. Before the nation had a chance to process what it was seeing, Charles lifted the crown with shaky hands and officially announced that she would be the next leader of the crown. In order to ensure that you do not miss any updates, make sure that you subscribe to our newsletter before we delve further into the implications that this has for the royal family. Catherine remained on the spot. She turned her gaze to William, who was standing across the hall, and the future king responded with a single subdued nod. Towards the vacant chair, she moved closer. Following the meeting, Buckingham Palace referred to it as a final national address, which means that it was the king's final official statement to the nation. No one, however, had provided an explanation for the second seat or the reason Camilla sat further away. The ceremonial crown of leadership, which is a symbolic crown that signifies authority over the family's public activity discipline and national representation, was raised by Charles. Not even close to being able to lower it, his hand started to shake. The gravity of the situation was brought to light by Catherine's steadying of his wrist. As William watched, he was aware that his wife was not taking his place as heir, but rather that she was gaining authority that would shape the kingdom before he even gained the throne. Catherine was given the authority to administer public responsibilities, settle family conflicts, and decide how the House of Windsor would portray itself after the king bestowed the crown upon her and declared her to be the new leader of the monarchy. The expression on Camilla's face shifted. As was the case with everyone else, the queen consort had discovered that the new system did not provide her with any governing function, private veto power, or guaranteed place in the decisions that were to come. After that, Charles disclosed by means of the proclamation that the decision had been finalized earlier in the morning. An official royal pronouncement that carried the authority of the monarch was known as a proclamation, and this particular proclamation could not be reversed by the complaints of individual families. Catherine's eyes fell as she did so. In silence, William did not move. Camilla appeared to be looking in the direction of her husband, but he did not return her gaze. There was complete silence in the room until the monarch removed his hand from Catherine's shoulder and pushed aside the speech that had been already prepared. According to him, the time has come for the future to be guided by strength that does not desire power. There was a roar of applause that followed. However, Anne was not keeping an eye on the crown. Underneath her brother's chair, the Princess Royal discovered a crimson envelope that had been sealed. Inside the folder was the confidential explanation for why her brother had selected Catherine over every other senior royal. However, the crown itself was merely a symbol for the general population. The real surprise was contained within the demands that this decision imposed on Catherine, William, and Charles, as well as the woman who was abruptly removed from the new center of power. From the perspective of those who were observing, it was a momentous transfer of control. The four individuals who were standing closest to the throne experienced something that was significantly more excruciating. There was no prior notification that Catherine had been increased. During this time, William had witnessed his wife, who was typically linked with the future monarch, gaining authority. Charles had given up the final responsibility that still made him feel necessary, and Camilla had been publicly displaced as a result of this. 4 private conflicts had already begun. These battles were taking place behind their controlled emotions. Catherine gently placed the crown on a narrow table after carrying it into a secluded antechamber and placing it there. Because of her new position, she now has immediate authority over the public direction of the monarchy, but William continues to be the next in line for succession. The title of Princess of Wales indicated that she was the wife of the heir, but her new status granted her this control, the predetermined order that would determine who would succeed to the throne. As the door shut behind them, she pressed both of her hands against the wood and listened intently. Right off the bat, William remained silent. The future king was aware that his wife had not succeeded him in his position. However, the power that was bestowed upon her would have a significant impact on the family before he began his own reign. At long last, Catherine turned around and inquired as to whether or not the announcement had embarrassed him. Although she spoke in a quiet tone, the terror that was hiding beneath it was evident. In spite of the fact that she had accepted Charles's trust, she could not bear the idea that the same action could have caused her husband significant harm. The prince made a headshake motion. He acknowledged that the fear that he felt was not related to being humiliated. Watching Catherine inherit the pressure that had once consumed his mother, the never-ending judgment, the public expectations, and the crushing demand to remain composed. While private pain became a topic of discussion on a national level, was the source of his fear. While William drew closer, he did not come close enough to touch the crown. As she looked at him, she realized that his lack of response had never been an indication of resentment. Terror had been the result. Only Anne and two trusted advisors were aware that Charles's final appearance would be a transfer of active leadership, despite the fact that he had spent weeks carefully limiting his public itinerary. Catherine was protected by the signed proclamation, which is a formal royal edict carrying the authority of the monarch. The king had concealed the choice because he felt that even a single early leak could spark rebellion before the proclamation protected her. 12 hours after Camilla found out that her name had been removed from the final draft, she was dealt a more severe blow. The queen consort was positioned as an advisor alongside her husband in an earlier version of the treaty. However, the final version of the Constitution did not assign her any specific role. After reading the amended page by herself, she folded it once and positioned it so that it was beneath her fingertips. Charles had not only altered the phrasing, rather, he had altered her future expectations. In response to William's inquiry regarding the selection of Catherine, Anne made her way into the antechamber. That the decision was not based on popularity, adulation, or public affection was something that the Princess Royal explained to them. In her statement, she stated that the Queen had chosen Catherine because she had been successful in a covert examination that all of the other senior royals had failed. William asked to know when the event would take place. Anne first turned her attention to the crown, and then she responded with a single date, the evening of the Windsor Founders' Ceremony, which had occurred 6 months before. Despite the fact that the public got the impression that the ceremony was unremarkable, Charles was forced to make the most momentous choice of his reign as a result of a confrontation that took place behind shut doors. The journey that led to Catherine's crowning did not begin with praise, affection, or a properly prepared succession strategy prior to her becoming queen. It all started for her when she stood alone in front of King Charles and refused to comply with a clear royal instruction 6 months previously. In spite of the fact that the quarrel lasted for less than 20 minutes, it altered the monarch's perspective on every individual in his immediate vicinity. The moment when Charles realized who could safeguard the crown was the time that what appeared to be an act of rebellion turned out to be the moment when allegiance and conscience no longer headed in the same direction from that point on. When Catherine arrived at the Windsor Founders' Ceremony, she was anticipating a typical demonstration of national solidarity. The ceremony was a private royal gathering, during which senior members of the royal family authorized future duties and obligations. However, behind the polished language of the event was a public responsibility framework that silently precluded some younger royals from significant service. Charles was of the opinion that the scheme would protect the monarchy from falling into scandal and uncertainty. A penalty that was inflicted without any evidence explanation or any opportunity for those who were affected to defend themselves was something that she regarded as being even more icy. Immediately following the conclusion of the ceremony, the monarch called her to his personal secret library. He positioned the framework in front of her and gave her the instruction to sign it. By the time Catherine had finished reading the last page, she had closed the folder and slowly pushed it back across the desk. While she pretended to be protecting the family, she assured him that she would not put her name to a choice that could be detrimental to the family dynamic. In spite of the fact that no one else was present, Charles experienced the refusal as if it were a public betrayal. At precisely the moment when he required unity, the monarch accused her of threatening his authority. Catherine's hands appeared to be shaking, but her response did not. According to her, obedience may be able to maintain silence, but it will never be able to rebuild confidence once innocent individuals have been condemned without being given a chance to defend themselves. Then she departed, trembling but adamant that she would not withdraw. After some time had passed, William provided an explanation of the total cost during a private conversation that was recorded and kept in the family archive. Instead of changing her position, his wife had been willing to forfeit patronage's access and future benefits. She had been prepared to do so. The argument was never used to weaken Charles. She never sought sympathy, and she never alerted the press on the status of the situation. The future monarch was aware of the fact that her discretion had safeguarded the same individual whose orders she had declined to carry out. From that moment onward, everything was different. A documented internal review was provided to Charles, which revealed that 2 advisors had hid evidence and exaggerated the risks that were used to justify the framework. At that moment, the kings came to the realization that Catherine's defiance had prevented a permanent injustice and revealed manipulation within his own inner circle. It was the monarch who summoned her to return to the library. No apology was issued by him. On the other hand, he inquired as to whether she would have disobeyed him if William had been in favor of the planning. Catherine maintained eye contact with him. Because the crown cannot require something that it would be embarrassed to explain. The answer is yes. Despite the fact that Charles did not make any statements, he started working on a private leadership document that was based on judgment rather than obedience from that day. It was his belief that its presence was concealed. The contrary was quickly observed by Camilla. And when the Queen found out that Catherine was being evaluated for privileges that no royal wife had anticipated, holding the disagreement that had been kept disguised turned into a direct battle for Charles's ultimate decision. Despite disagreements regarding titles, houses, money, and loyalty, the palace has managed to exist. The encounter that took place was unique. Camilla was not attempting to secure a formal preference for herself. Catherine would become the most powerful woman in the monarchy, and she was battling against the possibility that this would happen in the future. The 2 women faced each other across a drawing room that was completely silent. There were no assistants there, and the doors were closed. At first, neither of them raised their voices. At the conclusion of the meeting, however, one of the relationships had been irreparably damaged beyond repair. Camilla had made the request for the meeting after she learned that Charles was working on a leadership proclamation that would involve Catherine. A proclamation was a formal declaration made by the king that had the authority of such a declaration. The queen consort, on the other hand, had not yet seen the final terms. It was only through an earlier draft that she was aware that she had been placed in the middle of the transition, because Catherine was under the impression that a single private chat may prevent the quarrel from ripping the family apart in public. She consented to meet without William or any authorities from the palace having any involvement. Before making her move, the queen gave her considerable consideration. Catherine was accused of accepting influence while pretending not to desire it according to her accusation. She asserted that her modest reserve had made her more dangerous than courtiers, who appeared to be openly ambitious. Camilla stated that people had faith in the younger woman because she never gave the impression of seeking and obtaining authority. Despite this, War continued to move in her direction. Catherine did not interrupt the process of listening. The claim, however, sent shockwaves through her because she had never asked Charles to play the role that is currently dividing them. In response, Catherine stated that she had not made any requests to the king and that she would not apologize for being trusted by him during a time when he believed the monarchy was in danger. Following this, the Princess of Wales said that she had already requested that Harry rethink the decision. Her request had been denied by Charles, who said that a divided court was attempting to exert control over the transition prior to William inheriting the crown. Camilla was unable to self-regulate. The fact that Charles had first appointed her senior guardian of the crown was information that she disclosed through a copy of the abandoned draft, a role that is intended to supervise the public leadership of the family, with Catherine serving as the person who reports to her. It was with such force that the Queen pushed her chair back that it collided with the wall. It was imperative that she be informed as to whether or not the younger royal wanted to take her place alongside the Queen. Catherine remained fixed in her gaze. In contrast, I have every intention of standing where duty places me, even if that position is intolerable. The heightened voices were audible beyond the doors that were closed. The secret conflict had now reached Charles, who entered without any prior warning. He looked first at his wife and then at Catherine, and realized that he had been the target of the struggle. Camilla inquired as to whether the discarded written work was of no significance. In his response, the monarch said that it meant he had once believed that loyalty alone could ensure the future with certainty. It was now his belief that judgment was more important. Following the announcement made by Charles, the final proclamation was going to be signed before sunrise. After leaving without uttering a single word, the Queen shut the door with a calculated amount of force. Following this, the monarch turned to Catherine and cautioned her that resistance from family members was not the most significant threat. What posed the greatest danger was the legal authority that was disguised within the paper. Charles had not only planned a symbolic role, and those who understood the proclamation's true authority were aware that it had the potential to reorganize the monarchy before William ever ascended to the throne. It was intended for the crown that was placed on Catherine's head to have a ceremonial appearance. The document that was in front of it was not. Within the final proclamation that Charles issued, there were powers that were able to determine who would represent the monarchy, who would be allowed to enter its inner councils, and which royal causes would be able to endure the transition that was to come. William continued to be the rightful owner of the throne, and the throne itself continued to be the property of the king. Catherine, on the other hand, was given the responsibility of directing the everyday operations of the crown. Leadership of the crown was the title given to Catherine's new post, which was a fictitious position that was intended to differentiate the constitutional position of sovereign from the control of public and family matters. As long as Charles remained the monarch, William continued to be the heir. However, she was now able to provide recommendations for who could be trusted to act publicly in the king's name, as well as coordinate senior duties, approve long-term charity initiatives, and settle internal disagreements. It was important to make this distinction because one title was responsible for carrying the throne, while the other title controlled the machinery that surrounded it. William had an instantaneous comprehension of the threat. As a result of the role, the future king was concerned that his wife would be subjected to attacks that are often directed at the sovereign, while also being denied the legal protection and unchallenged authority that are associated with kingship. Without the protection of the throne, Catherine would be responsible for carrying out her duties. He confided in Charles in a private conversation that the office had the potential to make her the target of any complaint that was lodged inside the family. No one in the king's court disagreed. Before morning, he admitted to Anne that he felt almost cruel towards Catherine because he had placed such a heavy burden on her. Every suspension, every appointment, and every public choice that the monarch made was something she was aware of was going to be evaluated. But he was of the opinion that leaving the organization without a reliable leader would be much more detrimental. Before William ever had the opportunity to assume the throne, the family may be torn apart by competing loyalties if there wasn't one firm hand. At the beginning of the morning, Anne observed her brother signing the last page of the document. A momentary delay occurred just before the final letter of his name, and the Princess Royal observed that his hand was hanging over the page. Without making physical contact with him, she positioned her palm next to the document. The signature was completed by Charles, but the hesitation showed something that the words were unable to convey. He was aware that this command would do harm to the individuals he cared about. Hidden clauses made the risk even more severe than it already was. In the first, Catherine was granted the authority to suspend the public duties of any senior royal whose behavior posed a threat to the public's faith in the monarchy. There was another factor that prohibited the office from being automatically transferred to Camilla William or any other future consort. Only via a written decision that was based on consistent service sound judgment and demonstrated self-control could the position be maintained. After pressing the royal seal into the proclamation, Charles handed Anne the pen which he had previously used. The formal certification that the document held the authority of the monarch was a royal seal, which was the official symbol as well. His request was for her to destroy it, so that it could never be used for another place of business. In front of the silver tray, she shattered it into 2 pieces. Afterwards, the count was altered. Just prior to the start of the event, a single copy that was not signed was taken from the private office. There was no one who knew who had seized it, but within a few hours, Catherine's new authority started spreading around the castle. Despite the fact that the announcement had only lasted for a few minutes, by the time the royal family had left, the hall doors were closing, timetables were being altered, and one individual had already been dismissed from Catherine's first council. It was not through another speech that the first indication of the new order was shown. It was accidentally discovered when a chair was taken out of a conference room. Within an hour of Catherine's coronation, the staff was given fresh instructions, royal activities were put on hold, and the private council that had previously been centered around Charles and Camilla was reorganized. The same message was conveyed by each and every alteration. There was no theater in this. Before anybody could question it, Catherine had been given true authority, and the old balance of influence that had existed inside the monarchy had been broken entirely. The first leadership meeting that Catherine would ever hold was scheduled for that evening, and she invited William and Edward and a select group of advisors who had active tasks alongside them. Attendance at the private council, which was the inner group that assisted in the direction of royal activities, was now determined by the individual's current function rather than their position or marriage. In addition to that, she put a 48-hour hold on any and all permitted announcements. The break was significant because in the absence of it, competing groups may have taken advantage of the changeover rushed through appointments or secured influence before the new organization was fully established. Camilla came knowing that she would be able to find her usual spot next to Charles. When the queen consort noticed that her chair had been taken away and that her name was absent, she came to a halt. She remained silent for a number of more seconds. Despite the fact that the monarch observed his wife taking in the exclusion, he did not request that anyone rectify the situation. This silence hurt her more than any public statement could have, because it demonstrated that he would defend Catherine's authority, even if doing so would have a negative impact on their marriage. With no intention of entering, the queen turned away. She went back to her private sitting chamber, removed the brooch that Charles had given her at the beginning of his reign, and placed it next to a copy of the proclamation that had not yet been opened. A little moment passed, during which her hand lingered on the jewelry, as if the small thing contained all of the promises that had been given prior to the power beginning to move away from her. Upon entering the council chamber, Catherine immediately became aware of the large amount of vacant space. As a result of the new leader's refusal to allow Camilla's removal to become a public display of humiliation, she ordered the arrival of another chair. However, she did not extend an invitation to Camilla to return. Her initial choice was not directed against the Queen in any way. She issued an order that a formal investigation be conducted into the missing copy of the leadership paper, and she prohibited anybody from destroying communications, erasing information, or making changes to access logs. As William looked over the security report, he could feel the atmosphere in the room becoming more tense. His office code, which is a digital identity that is used to authorize documents in the prince's name, had been used to make the request for the copy that eventually disappeared. The future monarch was aware of the implications that this finding had. Despite the fact that they had not even finished their first meeting, someone was attempting to make him appear disloyal to his wife. Anne strongly urged restraint, while Edward cautioned that the false trail could cause the family to become more divided than any document that was leaked. While Catherine listened, she continued to keep her gaze fixed on William. The doors were shut, and the advisors had left before he waited for them to go. For the first time since the crown had touched her head, the prince finally voiced the question that neither of them had the courage to confront. "Have you put your faith in me?" There is a possibility that the monarchy will endure a public struggle for influence. However, if Charles's final deed caused uncertainty between the future king and the woman who was selected to lead alongside him, then it would be impossible for it to endure. When the doors were finally shut and all of the advisors had left, there was no king, no future sovereign, and no freshly crowned leader present in the chamber. There was only William and Catherine, a husband and wife, standing on opposing sides of a judgment that neither of them had asked. At that same moment, she revealed for the very first time that she was terrified. He said for the very first time that a portion of him had felt resentment due to the fact that he had learned of Charles's decision with the rest of the world. William remained close to the entrance, while Catherine stood next to the closed crown case when the door was opened. At this point, there were no aids, paperwork, or ceremonial emblems that set them apart. It was revealed by the future king that he concurred with the objective of her job, but that the concealment had caused a great deal of pain. Charles had left him without the opportunity to make preparations to defend or even reassure his wife before the news put her in a position where she was subject to the judgment of the people. Catherine's tone became more toned down. She acknowledged that the king had only relayed the information to her a few minutes before the ceremony, and she demanded that William also make a promise to remain silent. The newly appointed leader had complied with Charles's request because he was concerned that the decision would be thwarted before it could be made official. She was aware of the consequences that resulted from her silence. Her spouse had been coerced into learning about her new authority, and the entire world was watching his face as he accepted it. Finally, the prince admitted that the secret made him feel less like her partner and more like a challenge to her leadership. He said that this was the outcome of the situation. In the meantime, he had observed the power shifting towards Catherine, all the while wondering whether or not the palace thought he might take a stance against her. Her response was that her terror was distinct from others. The monarchy could be left without direction if Charles is rejected at this time, but accepting him could result in the formation of a competing court around Elizabeth, a distinct sphere of influence that is in competition with the upcoming independent government. After that, William went on to describe what the findings of the security review were. The office code that was used to seek the missing proclamation was obtained from an antiquated terminal that was accessible to a number of senior professionals on staff. A digital authorization that was linked to a royal household was what an office code was. It was not evidence that the king person had taken action. Despite the fact that the discovery exonerated him of any intentional involvement, it also demonstrated that someone had intended for suspicion to be placed between them. Catherine took the initiative to initiate the investigation and assumed the role of leader. She made it available to her husband and assured him that she would give it back to him if he considered that it was a barrier between them. After taking a look at the crown, William shut the lid of the case and then gently pushed it back towards her. He informed her that the threat was not the burden itself, it was the secrecy. The promise that Catherine made was that every significant issue would be discussed in private before it was brought to the attention of the council. William was in agreement. However, neither would demand obedience when there was a question of conscience involved. In order for their partnership to endure, it is imperative that honesty takes precedence over rank. They were prepared to make their appearance together by the morning. After then, the public became aware of the missing proclamation, which ultimately revealed the whole authority that Charles had placed in Catherine's hands. Through their tight relationship behind closed doors, William and Catherine were prepared to face the nation. One front page, however, had already turned a private royal transition into a national reckoning. This was happening outside of the palace. When dawn arrived, the wording that had been kept secret for the announcement was no longer a secret. After learning that Catherine had not merely been honored with a ceremonial honor, the nation was shocked. She had been given the responsibility of actively leading the royal family through its activities. Crowds gathered, their schedules were disrupted by broadcasters, and newspapers announced the beginning of a new period in royal history. Nevertheless, behind all of the jubilation was a more profound inquiry. It was not about whether or not Catherine was liked. Rather, it was about whether or not Charles had permanently altered the monarchy. The initial reports were read by Catherine in complete quiet. Her authority over public duties, family representation, charitable strategy, and internal standards was validated by the copy that was leaked. It was important to have those powers because they determined who spoke for the monarchy, which causes received support from the royal family, and how the family would be evaluated in the event that conflict resurfaced. This appointment was not for ornamental purposes. Real responsibility was placed in her hands prior to William's succession to the throne as a result of this. Within an hour, the entire declaration was made public by the staff of the palace building. This prevented some portions from being twisted into assertions that Catherine had supplanted her husband or usurped constitutional power. A proclamation was a formal royal pronouncement that carried the authority of the king. Publishing the complete text prevented this from happening. William would continue to be the unchallenged successor. However, the general public was now aware that his wife would be the one to direct the everyday activities of the household. Catherine experienced the coziness of the support, but the joyous occasion swiftly transformed into a terrible experience. A number of commentators started describing her elevation as evidence that Charles had lost faith in his son. It was the accusation that struck at the one fear that she and William had just recently confronted in private settings. The future king was adamant about not allowing that suspicion to develop. Even though he was aware that even a few steps of space would be utilized as evidence of a divided court, he persisted on walking alongside her during their initial appearance together. Buckingham Palace was surrounded by hundreds of people who were gathering under umbrellas as rain fell outside. Catherine was shown beneath the words, "Charles's final crown, Catherine to lead the House of Windsor," on the front page of the newspaper, which was lifted by a seller selling newspapers. In close proximity, a national broadcaster referred to the decision as a transition of active royal leadership, which did not include an abdication taking place, following her repeated assertion that the prince will continue to be the next in line for the throne. Anne finally broke her silence by releasing a recorded statement from the palace. It was confirmed by the Princess Royal that the king had started making preparations for the decision which was made after Catherine prevented the Windsor framework from becoming unfair. The significance of the entire event was altered as a result of her account. In light of the fact that the new leader had earned Charles's trust by refusing him when obeying would have been detrimental to the family, what detractors had referred to as ambition now appeared to be moral bravery. Charles, who was hiding behind a palace window, listened to the chanting below him. When the monarch heard Catherine's voice rising above the rain, he turned his attention to Anne in a low voice. "They are aware of the reasons I selected her," he stated. In her response, she stated that they only understood a portion of it. Still, Catherine was the one who possessed the deeper significance. Prior to the family coming forward as a unit, she had to make a decision regarding whether or not her initial public statement would be to defend her own position or to explain why Charles had given up his final authority. Catherine, when she eventually took the stage to speak, did not assert her win, provide an explanation for her authority, or respond to those who had criticized her. She was the one who delivered the verdict that would determine the new era of the throne. Without a ceremonial crown, Catherine stepped before the nation and addressed the people. Due to the fact that her first act as leader would not be about displaying authority, she had made the decision to keep it within the palace. The issue would be determining what it is. Charles sat nearby, appearing to be exhausted, but being unruffled. It was William who stood at her side. While Anne remained behind the king, Camilla observed the event from a distance that was carefully measured. There was one last question that took precedence over every rivalry and secret pain that existed at that very moment. What form of monarchy would be able to endure for all of them? Catherine started off by reiterating that William would continue to be the future sovereign and that her new job would serve to bolster his eventual reign rather than to compete with it. While the sovereign was the individual who constitutionally occupied the throne, her job was associated with the day-to-day leadership of the royal family. For the first time, she pledged that the standard of service would no longer be determined by marriage title or proximity to power, but rather by behavior, consistency, and public trust. As his wife acknowledged the stress that Charles's decision had imposed upon their family, William listened attentively. Every rumor that the crowning had caused them to become estranged was dispelled when the future king reached out and grabbed her hand. Catherine clenched her fingers tightly around his fingers and made it clear what they were used for. Together, they would pursue their goals without establishing competing courts or allowing silence to undermine the strength of their union. During the time when the new leader was turning towards Camilla, she did not move. Despite the fact that the queen consort was aware that the arrangement had resulted in the termination of her influence over the future course of the monarchy, Catherine refused to make the loss of her influence into a public outrage. In spite of the years of duty and uncertainty, she expressed her gratitude to Camilla for remaining by Charles's side. The queen bowed her head, acknowledging that she could no longer control the consequences of the future. It was then that Catherine made her first public declaration of authority. In order to prevent secret advisors from influencing the crown through secrecy, every key decision made inside the organization would be required to have written justifications. In addition, she reinstated consultation rights for royals who had been subjected to restrictions. This meant that no member of the royal family could be punished without being informed of the reason or given the opportunity to react. The wrongdoing that had been committed at the event honoring the Windsor founders had at long last been rectified. After the conclusion of the address, Charles gently stood up. As he dropped his head, the king clasped Catherine's hand in both of his hands and embraced her. It was not as a ruler giving up the throne, but rather as a father-in-law realizing that his last job had been fulfilled. While Anne witnessed her brother let go of the burden he had been carrying, William remained by the side of the woman who had been selected to guide the woman through the transition. The constitutional position of the monarch was not affected by his decision to step down from public leadership. Continued preparations for the throne were made by William. Catherine acknowledged the responsibility that she would be in charge of guiding the family through the years to come. The final act that Charles had committed was never an act of rejection towards his son, an assault on Camilla, or a reward for his popularity. This was an admission that the crown needs someone who was willing to confront power without intending to do so intentionally. It was the time that earned trust triumphed over hereditary influence, and the family realized that they had not been stripped of their position of leadership. Catherine's crowning was the moment that this occurred. It was positioned in the location where sacrifice had previously demonstrated that it belonged. In addition, Catherine did not stand in front of or behind the crown as King Charles departed the public stage for the very last time. She stood at its center, carrying its future with William by her side, and the monarchy finally came together in support of a leader who had never asked to rule. We appreciate you watching. We would appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you in the next one.